A man steps into an olive grove in the dead of night, flanked by the clatter of Roman iron and the violent orange glow of cedar torches, and sparking a riot. They need an absolute, undeniable identification. Judas has given them a sign, the one I will kiss. He is the man. Seize him. From the mouth of the rabbi himself. They know what this level of affection is supposed to mean. To see it used as a trigger for a military arrest is a cognitive dissonance that shatters the mind. The true horror of the garden is not the weapons. It is the counterfeit affection. The worst wounds of the night do not come from the iron spikes at Golgotha. They come from the lips of a friend in the olive grove. But the frantic, suffocating nature of Judas's embrace reveals something deeply broken inside the betrayer himself. The repetition is not just a tactical cover for the guards. It is a desperate psychological reflex, because the detail that changes how you view Judas in this moment is the reason behind his excess. We are a species desperate to hide our betrayals behind a mask of devotion. If you are in a season where you feel the crushing weight of a compromised conscience, the Garden of Gethsemane is a mirror holding up a reflection you might not want to see. Judas did not kiss Jesus repeatedly because the Roman guards needed more time to close the circle. He kissed him repeatedly because he was trying to convince himself that he was still a friend. You've probably heard this story 100 times. We picture it as a quick, nervous motion, a brief peck on the cheek, a momentary brush of the face. You know the feeling of this overcompensation in your own chest. When you have spoken ill of someone behind their back, when you have betrayed a confidence, when you have compromised your integrity in the dark. The natural human reflex is not immediate confession. The reflex is to manufacture an exaggerated warmth in the light. You feel the cold sweat on your palms when you smile at the person you just undercut. You force a hollow laughter in a room where you know you no longer belong. You swallow the heavy, metallic taste of a lie you have to keep maintaining. And you overcompensate with physical enthusiasm to ensure no one suspects a thing. The excess of affection is not proof of loyalty. It is the anesthetic for a guilty conscience. Judas is trapped in the terrifying momentum of his own choices. Standing in the cold night air, his hands gripping the woolen cloak of the man he has just sold for the price of a gored slave. And his psychological response is to double down on the performance of love. He uses the sacred grammar of physical touch to drown out the screaming of his own soul. If he can just play the part of the devoted student, before Judas recoils in shame and the soldiers rush in, we expect enemies to look like enemies. We expect treason to hold a sword, not an embrace. If he can just keep saying the title rabbi, if he can just press his face against the cheek of the Messiah one more time, maybe the horrific reality of the silver coins heavy in his pouch will somehow feel less condemning. Think about how exhausting it is to maintain a posture of piety when your heart has already signed a contract with the enemy. You show up to the religious gatherings. You sing the songs. You use the right theological vocabulary. And you make sure everyone sees you doing it. But the louder you sing, the more hollow it echoes in your own ears. You try to bridge the distance you created by manufacturing a false intimacy. You try to silence the conviction by offering God a performance of devotion, hoping He will accept the volume of your praise as a substitute for the obedience of your life. This is the tragic anatomy of the Judas kiss. A terrifying moment when a believer decides to use the language of love as a shield against the light of truth. But you cannot smother the truth with counterfeit affection. When you are caught in the tension between what you project on the outside and what you know is rotting on the inside, the exhaustion is paralyzing. You carry it in the tension of your jaw. Most people assume the kiss was nothing more than a functional marker, a tragic but simple pointer in the dark. And it is tragic. And the shallow breaths you take when someone looks at you just a second too long. Jesus feels the frantic, suffocating weight of this. Kataphileo, assault in the garden. He feels the panic in the hands gripping his arms. And he smells the desperation mixing with the olive dust. And it is in this exact moment, while the false kisses are still landing on his face, and the swords are drawing closer, that Jesus speaks. He does not scream, and he does not push the betrayer into the dirt. What he actually says is a single sentence that completely dismantles the performance. The kisses are still landing on his face. The grip on his woolen cloak is white-knuckled and shaking. The air in the garden is suffocating, thick with the smoke of pitch torches and the heavy, terrified breathing of the betrayer. Judas is smothering him with counterfeit devotion, using the highest expression of intimacy to trigger the iron swords hiding in the tree line. Jesus can feel the panic in the man's hands. He can see the violent orange light dancing in the eyes of the student he chose, the student he taught, the student whose feet he washed just hours ago. He does not push Judas into the dirt. He does not scream for the temple guards to step forward. He does not call down fire on the olive grove. He stands perfectly still. But if you look closer at the specific Greek vocabulary Matthew and Mark choose to record this moment, at the terrifying grammar hiding beneath the English translation, he absorbs the assault of affection. He lets the betrayer finish the performance. And then, Jesus looks into the eyes of the man who sold him for the price of a dead slave. And he speaks a single sentence. In the Greek text of Matthew 26, the words cut through the night air like a quiet blade over the noise of the advancing guards. Friend, do what you came to do. Jesus' response is not a plea for mercy. It is a profound unmasking. He uses a very specific word for friend here. He does not use philos, the word for a beloved companion of the heart. He uses heteros. It means comrade. It means a companion in a shared enterprise. It is a word of proximity, not intimacy. Jesus is holding up a mirror in the dark. He is telling Judas, I know exactly who you are, and I know exactly what you are doing. You do not have to hide behind the kisses anymore. The performance is over. The mask is stripped away. The title of rabbi falls empty to the crushed olive leaves on the ground. The frantic, repeated, Kataphileo, kisses lose their power. Jesus looks at the man who has weaponized love, and he refuses to play the victim in his own murder. He takes command of the moment. He permits the betrayal to proceed. Acknowledging that the shadows have a purpose, you start to see a reality that the standard reading completely misses. The kiss was not a brief signal. It was a suffocating performance. He gives the comrade permission to finish the dark enterprise. The sovereignty of God stands in the dirt of Gethsemane, wearing human skin, feeling the cold wind, looking straight into the face of treason. And he does not flinch. But the way the rest of the disciples react to this quiet surrender and what it reveals about how easily we misunderstand the nature of God's battles is the final tragedy of the garden. The mask drops. The swords come out. The garden descends into chaos. Peter strikes. A heavy iron blade flashes in the torchlight. Cartilage tears. Warm blood hits the cold limestone. He aims for a head and severs an ear. He sees the ultimate betrayal, and his immediate instinct is violence. We do the exact same thing. This is the default human anatomy of betrayal. When we are deceived, we destroy. When intimacy is weaponized against us, we reach for our own weapons. We answer a false kiss with a sharp edge. But Jesus rejects both. He rejects the suffocating, counterfeit affection of Judas. He rejects the frantic, lethal violence of Peter. One disciple uses intimacy to kill. Another uses iron to save. Both of them miss the Messiah entirely. They are both trying to manage God. They are projecting their own versions of power onto a rabbi who is about to redefine power forever. Judas wants a transaction. The English text hides the sheer brutality of the affection. To understand what Judas actually did in the shadows of Gethsemane, and why Jesus responded, Peter wants a war. Jesus wants a cross. The disciples cannot comprehend a God who lets himself be kissed by treason. They cannot fathom a king who refuses to fight back when the enemy is standing inches away. We project our own insecurities onto the divine. When we are threatened, we want a God who swings a sword. We want fire to fall from the sky and consume the temple guards. We want immediate, visible, undeniable vindication. If someone betrayed us with a kiss, we would want them destroyed. But God does not operate in the economy of human retaliation. He operates in the economy of redemption. Every single human reaction in Gethsemane is flawed. The religious leaders use fear. Judas uses false affection. Peter uses lethal force. The rest of the disciples use flight. Only Jesus stands perfectly aligned with the will of the Father. He reaches out his hand in the dark. He touches the side of the servant's bleeding head. He heals the wound. Then, he turns to Peter. Put the sword away. He is dismantling our entire framework of power. The kingdom of heaven is not established by shedding the blood of your enemies. It is established by shedding your own. The arrest proceeds. The heavy leather straps are pulled tight around the wrists of the rabbi, the exact way he did. You have to step out of our modern assumptions. You have to look at the rigid protocol of a first-century rabbi. The disciples scatter into the thick darkness of the olive grove, terrified and disillusioned. Judas vanishes into the night, carrying a pouch of silver that will soon feel heavier than a millstone. We look at this scene, and we see a tragic defeat. We see a good teacher outmaneuvered by corrupt politicians and a greedy friend. The surrender in the olive grove is not a sign of weakness. It is the ultimate display of control. Jesus takes the worst of human deception, the worst of religious corruption, the worst of our violent reflexes, and he absorbs all of it. He is not the victim of the Judas kiss. He is the architect of a rescue mission, willingly walking into the trap. But the silence that falls over the empty garden is not the end of the story, because the ripples of this single betrayal are about to echo through the rest of human history. A man walks into an olive grove with a mob and uses intimacy as a weapon. A teacher stands waiting in the shadows and refuses to flinch when the darkness arrives. A standard greeting of friendship is planned, and it fractures into a suffocating performance of guilt. We project our modern habits onto ancient dirt. We treat a kiss on the cheek like a handshake, a casual custom. The highest vocabulary of human devotion is hijacked and turned into the trigger for an arrest. A disciple draws an iron sword in panic, and the Messiah heals the enemy he strikes. The guards bind the hands of the Creator, and the kingdom of heaven moves one step closer to the cross. The word for desperate, uncontainable love is used for murder, and God allows himself to be kissed by treason anyway. One night, one garden, one surrendered king. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the terrifying repetition of that Greek verb, Kataphileo. Judas grabbing the woolen cloak of Jesus, pulling him close, and smothering his face with frantic, continuous kisses while the silver coins sit heavy in his pouch. It stays with me because it is so entirely, tragically human. He didn't run away. He overcompensated. He used the physical motion of absolute surrender to mask a heart that had already walked away. If you are in a season where your outward devotion does not match your internal reality, this story is an invitation to stop performing. If you feel the crushing weight of a compromised conscience, and your reflex is to just sing louder, serve harder, and project a flawless piety, a fleeting social grace we exchange at family dinners, it was none of those things. In the world of the first-century rabbi, honor is a physical boundary. To everyone around you, to ensure no one suspects a thing, Jesus is holding up a mirror in the dark. He did not ask for a performance in the garden, and he is not asking for one now. He would rather have your honest confessions than your counterfeit affection. He is the one who sees straight through the Kataphileō mask, calls you comrade, and takes the weight of your betrayal to the cross anyway. If this opens something in you, subscribe. Leave a comment, even one word helps. Share this with someone who is exhausted by their own religious performance. Pray for us as we keep digging into these ancient texts. And may the God who never once flinched in the face of our worst deception meet you in the quiet of your own garden and give you the courage to drop the mask and finally be known. He is not a stranger. He is not a temple guard who needs a physical description of the carpenter from Nazareth. He is one of the 12. It has weight. It has architecture. A disciple follows. A disciple listens. A disciple walks in, the chalky white dust kicked up by his teacher's sandals. The rabbi speaks. The student memorizes. The rabbi sits. The student sits on the hard stone at his feet. The hierarchy is absolute. The distance is sacred. You do not grab your master. You do not presume intimacy. You do not initiate a physical embrace uninvited. A kiss is a heavily loaded currency. It is meant for an equal. It is meant for a brother. It is meant for a son returning from a long journey, his wool cloak smelling of road dirt and livestock. When a student approaches a respected teacher in the temple courts or on the dirt roads of Galilee, the protocol is rigid. They bow. They lower their eyes. They use titles of extreme deference. They wait for the teacher to bridge the gap. To step forward and kiss a rabbi unprompted is an act of supreme arrogance. It is a claim of equality. It is a sudden, violent breach of the social fabric. Judas spent 3 years living this protocol. He watched the crowds part for Jesus. He saw the Pharisees demand the seats of honor at the Passover tables, pulling their tasseled garments away from the commoners. He understood how power moved in this society. He knew the unwritten laws of physical touch, and he weaponizes them anyway. He is a man who has broken the multiplied bread, slept under the same open skies. The signal he gives to the temple guards is not a random choice. He could have just pointed a finger. He could have handed over a piece of Jesus's outer garment. He could have nodded his head when the torchlight hit the right face. He could have simply spoken his name aloud in the cold night air. But he chooses the kiss. He uses the symbol of ultimate, familial loyalty, to execute the ultimate treason. He wraps a murder in the clothing of devotion. The betrayal is not a transaction. It is a performance. Judas wants the arresting officers to think he is simply greeting an old friend. He wants to maintain his cover until the very last second, letting the violence erupt from the hands of others, while he plays the affectionate student. He wants the intimacy of the inner circle, without the loyalty of the cross. But the detail that changes how you read this entire encounter is hiding in what happens the moment he actually reaches Jesus. Because what he does in the shadows of the olive trees is far worse than a simple greeting. The noise of the mob is deafening. Iron clanks against thick leather straps. Heavy boots snap dead olive branches, and men shout over one another in the dark. The arresting force is tense, operating blindly in the shadows of the mount, terrified of an ambush, and just hours ago had his feet washed by the very person he is now hunting. He walks ahead of the mob, but at the center of the grove, there is a suffocating stillness. Judas steps out from the mass of bodies. The ancient olive trees cast long, distorted silhouettes against the limestone rock as the torches hiss and spit in the wind. The temple guards hold their ground, their knuckles white on the hilts of their swords in the cold spring air, waiting for the definitive sign. Jesus does not run. He does not retreat into the deeper darkness of the garden. He stands in the clearing, watching the man who carried his money box, the man who ate his bread just hours earlier, close the distance. Judas walks straight toward the rabbi. Peter is standing just feet away, the rough wood of a concealed sword pressing into his palm. The other disciples are frozen, their breath visible in the chill night, watching the ultimate taboo unfold. Judas bridges the gap that no student is supposed to bridge. He reaches out in the dark. This is not a simple arrest. It is a desecration. The torches throw a violent, flickering light across the face of the betrayer. Judas speaks into the quiet of the grove, his voice cutting through the tension. "Greetings, Rabbi." The words hang in the heavy air. And then, the physical contact happens. We imagine a quick brush of the cheek. The ground beneath his sandals is the same ground he has walked with his teacher for 3 years. And he is about to use a single, guilty peck before a rapid step backward into the safety of the armed guards. That is exactly what the agreement dictated. When Judas made the deal with the chief priests, he told them, "The one I will kiss. He is the man." The Greek word he used when outlining the plan to the authorities was phileo, a basic, standard kiss of friendship, a single, functional mark of identification to trigger the arrest. But standing there, face to face with the man who commands the wind and the waves, Judas overcompensatus, he breaks under the weight of his own lie. When the moment of truth arrives, the text abruptly shifts. Matthew and Mark do not use phileo to describe what Judas actually does to the face of Jesus. The moment Judas crosses the physical boundary of the rabbi, a sudden, violent change happens in the grammar itself. And when you see the actual word, the gospel writers pull from the Greek language to record this embrace. The entire scene in the garden transforms from a quiet betrayal into a psychological assault. In Matthew chapter 26, verse 48, Judas gives his final instructions to the armed guard before stepping into the clearing. He uses the standard Greek verb for a kiss of friendship, phileo. He tells the religious authorities that he will simply identify the target with a standard, customary greeting, the ultimate gesture of intimacy to deliver a death sentence. The air in Gethsemane is thick, heavy with the smell of crushed olives. But one verse later, in verse 49, when Judas actually steps up to Jesus in the flesh, the writer changes the verb entirely. The word Matthew uses to describe the actual physical contact is the Greek Kataphileo. It is a compound word, and the prefix changes the entire psychological weight of the scene. The prefix kata means down, against, or according to, but in this specific grammatical construction, it functions as an intense amplifier. It takes the base action of a kiss and multiplies it, turning a simple gesture into a heavy, continuous, overwhelming physical action. Kataphileo does not mean to kiss once. It means to kiss fervently, to kiss repeatedly, to smother someone in an aggressive, prolonged display of affection. When Judas made the deal in the temple courts, he thought phileo would be enough. He envisioned a cold, calculated transaction. But standing in the garden, looking into the eyes of the man who had fed thousands and commanded the wind, panic sets in. The sheer weight of the guilt requires a cover. Judas did not give a quick, nervous peck on the cheek and step away. He grabbed his rabbi, pulled him in close, and kissed him over and over and over again, his hands gripping Jesus tightly, while the torchlight illuminated his frantic affection. If the hidden depths of this language are stirring up questions you have never considered and the sweat of exhausted men, Jesus stands waiting in the dark. Behind him, the disciples are stumbling upward from the dirt, rubbing sleep from their eyes. You are exactly who this channel is for. Drop a thought in the comments and hit subscribe, because every week we go deeper into the text than you knew was possible. So the betrayal unfolds in a barrage of embraces. To fully grasp how perverse this moment is, you have to look at how the rest of the New Testament uses this specific, intensified verb. Kataphileo only appears a handful of times in the Greek text, and it is almost strictly reserved for moments of earth-shattering, redemptive love. It is the exact same word Luke uses in chapter 7. When a woman with a sinful reputation breaks into a Pharisee's dinner party, falls to the hard stone floor, and repeatedly kisses the dust-covered feet of Jesus, it is the exact same word used in Luke chapter 15. When a heartbroken father sees his prodigal son walking up the dirt road in ruined clothes, sprints across the open field, throws his arms around the boy's neck, and kisses him fervently, Kataphileo is the vocabulary of desperate, uncontainable love. Judas takes the highest expression of human devotion and twists it into a mechanism for murder. The embrace was not a simple act of identification. It was a frantic attempt to hide a guilty conscience behind a mask of excessive affection. But Jesus is not fooled by the performance. Paralyzed by the sudden intrusion of an armed militia, the crowd steps into the clearing, breathing out threats, carrying swords and wooden clubs. They need a target, and his immediate response breaks the tension in a way no one in the garden expects. A woman falls to a stone floor. The dining room of the Pharisee goes dead silent. The clatter of clay cups stops midair. She breaks an alabaster flask. The heavy, thick scent of expensive perfume floods the room, masking the smell of roasted meat and sweat. She weeps over feet caked in Galilean dirt. She wipes away the mud with her hair. She kisses his feet, over and over and over again. That is Kataphileo. That is Kataphileo. A father stands by a wooden gate. He stares down a long, empty dirt road. He sees a broken silhouette walking out of the heat haze. He abandons his dignity. He pulls up his heavy robes. He runs. His sandals kick up the white dust as he sprints toward a boy whose clothes smell of mud, pigs, and famine. He throws his arms around his son. He kisses his face. Over and over and over again. That is Kataphileo. The Greek word is reserved for the absolute peak of human emotion. It is the language of desperate rescue. It is the vocabulary of unconditional surrender. These are not polite greetings. They are explosions of the soul. When the woman on the floor does it, she is publicly declaring her need for mercy. Jerusalem at Passover is swollen with pilgrims, and the garden is shrouded in shadows. The priests cannot risk arresting the wrong man in the dark, letting her tears wash away her shame. When the father on the road does it, he is publicly declaring his forgiveness, throwing his own honor into the dirt to restore his son. In the ancient world, this kind of continuous, fervent kissing is a complete vulnerability of the self. You cannot fake it. You cannot manufacture the gravity of it. It requires the total exposure of the heart, and that is exactly what Judas is attempting to hijack in the darkness of Gethsemane. He takes the holiest physical expression of devotion, available to a first-century Jew, and he hollows it out. He uses the motion of absolute surrender to execute an ambush. He grabs his rabbi. He pulls Jesus close. The kisses land on the cheeks of the Messiah in rapid, desperate succession. The smell of crushed olives is overpowered by the sharp metallic tang of the Roman swords, slowly advancing from the perimeter. The torchlight catches the glint of iron. The temple guards are closing the circle, their heavy leather boots crunching against the dry earth. And right in the center of the trap, Judas just keeps kissing him. Peter watches in horror. John is frozen in the shadows. They have seen Kataphileo before. They were in the room with the woman and the perfume. They heard the parable of the prodigal son.